With Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, VolQuest.com. Little full court press as Tennessee completes the non-conference schedule by beating USC upstate by a score of 80-60. Rob, probably a lot of people were anticipating maybe a bigger, wider margin or whatever. I mean, maybe it wasn't Tennessee's best start to this game, but again, depth showed up, and Tennessee ultimately, pulled away as you would expect them to against this team.
Yeah, I mean, sloppy early. Just sloppy out of the gate on both ends. There were 3 turnovers in about the first 2 minutes. Let Upstate shoot 50% from 3. They hit 9 of 18. A big reason was for Tennessee didn't pull away, and but I also think it's a kind of a byproduct of playing 3 games in 6 days, 2 in less than 48 hours. That means very little prep work. I don't think fatigue's an issue. I mean, as you mentioned, the depth. They don't have anybody playing 30 plus minutes a game on this squad, and maybe a little looking ahead to Christmas, even though the team is not leaving town. Maybe kind of anticipating the 5-day break before they play Missouri next week. But I just not a lot to get excited about today, but it doesn't really change my opinion that this is a really good basketball team.
I got to ask you about Josiah James. That looked like he had a little bit of a tweak of the knee or some kind of leg situation. What do you know on that? What did you see out of him in terms of after that injury? And then I want to talk about his game. But first, talk about the injury.
I don't want to say anything for certain before we talked with either him or Rick, but medical staff took him back in the tunnel, and the team doctor checked him out. It looked, to my untrained eye, like they were checking for an ACL injury. But then after about 5 minutes on the table, he came back to the bench and was interacting with teammates and seemed to be fine. So I'm optimistic that everything is okay there, but don't want to just make a blanket statement that before we talk to somebody from the program.
But let's talk about his game. It's so much about Springer and Johnson and Vescovi, and rightfully so. Those guys have played well. He's kind of just a glue guy. I mean, it's a bunch of marks in the stat sheet in a good way. He was again good tonight. 5 assists, 1 turnover. Shot the ball well. 3 of 5 from the floor. I think he had 6 or 8 rebounds in this game, and just kind of continuing to do what he does. Game seems to fit this team very well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I actually wrote this a couple of games ago. I don't remember after which game in quick takes, but I described him as like a high level Dane Bradshaw. No offense, Dane, but just a guy that does a lot of things. And he had 11 points today, led the team with 8 rebounds, 5 assists, played 28 minutes, just had the 1 turnover, had a couple of steals, blocked a shot. Just he took 6. I want to say he took 4 shots today from the field. Got to the line 6 times where he's 5 of 6, but took 4 shots and was the best player on the floor. And that's his game. And that's what he is. I mean, people, last year a lot of disappointment. This isn't a 5-star guy. This isn't a 5-star guy. But that's what you saw today is what he does, what he brings to the floor, and just he's hard. His game is hard to describe. Not many guys can do all the different things that he can do at 6'6".
This team is getting to the free throw line a bunch. I mean, a lot. They got there again today. How much of that is they're just more athletic than this non-conference stuff, or how much do you think that's going to be a marquee part of what they do offensively all year long?
Well, I think you touched on it. I think right now they're just way more athletic than anybody they've played. Victor Bailey and Springer in particular are guys that can take people off the dribble and put them in bad spots. But it's also a reflection of Rick wants to play inside out. I mean, he wants that ball, whether Fulkerson or Pons are taking shots, he wants it to get in the paint every single possession. And as a result, you're gonna get some fouls that way. But I do think a big part of it is you've got guards, especially Springer, that can get into the paint, draw contact.
And as this team closes out the non-conference, you mentioned the 5 days off. How good is it for this team to get a break? Because it kind of has been camp style for them since they came back from the break in action. And then just kind of your thoughts heading into SEC play, taking on Missouri.
I think the break comes at a good time. And as we mentioned, 3 games in 6 days, that's pretty hectic. So now you get a chance to catch your breath. 5 days isn't so long off. I think that you worry about getting rusty. So I kind of think that the timing is really good. And Missouri, ugly win last night, kind of a Conzo game. I think it was 57-53, 57-55, something like that. So they're good. They're veteran. They're tough. No surprise. Anybody that's familiar with Conzo Martin, But man, I just think Tennessee has too many horses. And I think that's going to be the case for everybody in the SEC. LSU's got some talent. Alabama has some talent. Kentucky obviously is talented, but they're a mess. And I'm not suggesting that Tennessee's going to run the table in the SEC, but for them to get beat, I think they're going to have an off night.
This Tennessee basketball team, Rick Barnes, they're giving the Vol fans a much needed Christmas gift because they've been a lot of fun to watch, and there's a lot of excitement about them heading into the remainder of this year and the start of SEC play. Again, Tennessee a 20-point winner today over USC Upstate. Full coverage at it at volquest.com. For Rob Lewis, I'm Brett Hubbs. Thanks for joining us for this Full Court Press.